Okay, you will need tea bags, paper towels, a cup that you can put water in, and copy paper, which is like normal printer paper. And you would need water. So first, you're going to put the tea bag in the cup. Then you will fill it up with warm water. And you'll put the tea bag down in it, like so. So it should look like this. And you put it in the microwave for a minute. Now, while you're waiting for that, you should put your paper towels aside. Okay, so you want to stay away from paper that is dog-eared or bent like this. So instead of using that kind of paper, you can try to get perfectly good paper. Okay, so always have a backup in case it fails. Get all materials out of the way. So put your paper flat down. Also make sure that your countertop is thoroughly clean. Okay. So the tea bag should be in warm water. You can put your paper however way you want to put your paper. You want to use if I'm doing a newspaper, so I'm usually newspapers up and down. If you want to do it this way, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna do it this way. So then you get your tea bags out. The water should be hot, and the water should turn brown if you can see it. The water should be brown. Then you also need a spoon. So you push the tea bag down in it and you sort of squish it, but you don't want to rip the bag open. And you get so the water's even darker. So you put your spoon aside. Then you take the tea bag out and you let a little bit of it drip off. And then you just start wiping it on the paper. Doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you do it. And it will start to wrinkle, that's okay. And make sure you get permission to do it on your countertop by your parent or your guardian so they know you're making a mess on the countertop. And this does not require the oven, and do not burn the edges, it just makes it look poor. You didn't do very good. So, if you can see, there's darker places where my tea is and where it isn't. If you want to, you can put the tea, like squeeze the bag in half and go all over the place. Make sure you get the corners, stab the corners with the tea bag. And then you unfold it if you did that, and you put it back in there so it can soak. Now, I like to push the paper and you bend it a little bit and then you bring the other new tea bag in so you get like edges and creases, and you can do it any way you want to. Doesn't matter how many creases you put in there. I like to put a couple creases. So if you like lots of creases, then all you have to do is sort of like pinch your paper but not all the way and then just dab your tea bag on it. And you can do little ones and big ones, and you can do whatever you want. And I sometimes like to do the corners to make it look more authentic. And then once you're happy with that, then you take it out. You take the other one that you just put back in and you bring it out and you squeeze it all over the paper. If you're doing this for a school project, your teachers may say to burn the edges. I would do that after, and if you like the way this turns out, then don't burn the edges. If you like the way your paper turns out, then I would don't burn the edges. And you just smear the tea all around so it's evenly coated. And make sure you get the corners, as I said before. If you don't get the corners, it won't look very good. And you can use your hands too if you like. And if you need to, you can wipe your hands. And you can smear it all around. Then I like to unfold my paper, like where the creases I made, and then I redo it again. So it's like they get a little bit of air, and they give it a. You don't want to constantly keep putting it on there because it might make the lines too weak and they might rip. Then you take any tea bags you want out of there. Usually I like to switch rotations so they get more soaked. And get all over the tea bag, all over the paper. And usually you don't want to push too hard because you may rip the tea bag and you may rip the paper. If you rip the tea bag, little black and brown things will come out and it'll be all over your paper, but you can wipe it off very gently with paper towels if that does happen. Yeah. So you can keep doing that for however long you want to. I usually like to get mainly my corners and the edges because usually all sits in the middle, as you can see. And I'm sort of doing like a rocking back and forth dab thing. And there you go. So that's what it would look like when you're trying to get your newspaper this way. This is what I found the best. I looked online and I found some other ways. So some of them say you can use soy sauce. Some of them say use coffee. But this I think makes it look more like an old newspaper. Okay. So now you're gonna need a sink. This is what comes in handy. You have your paper towel on standby waiting. Make sure you don't rip the edges when you're picking them up. The tea will go forward towards wherever you're lifting it up at. I would lift it towards the middle of your countertop. So as you can see, there is the newspaper. So to bring it closer to the sink, you just wiggle off the excess tea. Then I do this. I hang my newspaper a little bit on the edge so I can get it easily. Then you use your paper towel and you soak up all that tea that came off the newspaper, and then you would need another piece of paper towel, and then you put it a little bit to the side, and your paper goes directly where you just wipe the roof up. So then you dab your paper. It will take the color away, but I go back and do it again. But this time I don't fold it because this is when the paper is really weak, and if you fold it again, it will rip there where you put all the dark lines. So you don't want to do that because then you'll have ripped paper and it won't go through the print. Alright, so you take your tea bag out and you just put it all over the newspaper. I usually squeeze it out of here now because then it just sits however it wants to and it looks stained. And then I use the other tea bag and I squeeze it out. Don't try to go over a place that's sort of, don't overdo it because you want it evenly coated. So if there's like spaces like I have, like there's white right there, there, and there, don't do it over. Then don't do it over too much because then it'll make it look uneven unless you want it to look uneven. I usually like to keep my paper the same color. And as I said before, don't forget the corners because the corners are usually what looks the oldest. And if you really want to, you can sort of get it in the paper with your finger, like rub it in the paper, but don't rub too hard and don't push at all. Just sort of let your finger glide over it. So, and I like to squeeze it on the corners like more than half of the time because the corners, if you ever look at an old newspaper, usually you see that the corners what look the oldest. So there you go. This is where the sink is needed once again. So don't rip the paper when you pick it up. Sort of like push the corners up. Again, your key will go towards wherever you're pushing it, so don't go towards the end because it will fall off the end. Then you just jiggle off the excess tea in the sink, and it should be darker than it was last time. So you want to jiggle off the tea in your spot, and you can hang it off a little bit. You don't want it to like completely hang off. And another paper towel is needed, unless you want to use the same one. Doesn't matter. And I would clean it up before you go and do it again. This is the last step before drying. For drying, you will need newspaper, and you're just going to lay the piece of paper flat on the newspaper. I let mine dry overnight, and it got darker overnight. Sometimes, it depends on what kind of tea you have. It might be lighter or darker tea. It might not matter as much as it sometimes does. If you want to use coffee, you can. But I am doing it with tea, so that's a different video. Then I get a little piece of paper towels, not the full size, and I sort of make a triangle, and I put it around my finger, wrap it around my finger, and I sort of go wherever I want to, and it will make it lighter, so try dabbing it with it around your fingers, so it's like not like you're wiping it. And if you don't like the way it turns out, then you can rub it and it'll get darker. So that would be your newspaper, and that's an old-time newspaper. And if you have any other little spots you don't like, then you can just rub it put your finger under it and then just sort of rub it. And remember, if you rip it, then it's okay. When you dry it, make sure you like piece it together. Then I would move it again, and this time you will see that it will connect to your countertop if you're doing it on the counter. I wouldn't recommend doing it in cookie sheets or any of that. Do it on something like that's like a countertop. I would recommend doing it on your countertop in your kitchen. Maybe you would do it somewhere else, but that's what I'm saying. And then you can, when you're done, when it's out of the printer, I don't recommend ripping it before you get it in the printer because if you rip it before it gets in the printer, then there's a chance it might get jammed in there and ruin the printer. And your back should look the opposite of what happened, like the front should be darker. Then you're going to put your paper down. You're going to need the newspaper. I would set it out like somewhere on a table that nobody uses. Maybe in the dining room, maybe someplace where nobody really goes. Because if you put it in the kitchen where everybody usually goes, it could possibly get damaged, ripped. Water could be on it, and then it would make it wet again, and it could ruin the process. I would lay it flat on this side of the newspaper. Don't lay it across the crease of the newspaper. And then just let it overnight. And that is how you make a newspaper. And this is what it should look like with the finished project. Because I know you probably couldn't see it when I held it up before. And I think it turned out really good. Here is the finished project. It looks like